Hello and welcome to Football 301. I'm your host, Nate Tice. Very fun show for you as we have now got back to our houses from the combine. We're going to be previewing free agency. We're going to start with defense today, and then we'll do offense next week because the NFL calendar just never stops. And so we go free agency. We got draft stuff coming in the ongoing weeks. We got big boards up. My top 50 big board is up for the NFL draft. And the person who also did a top 50 big board is joining me today to now preview free agency because we are a college scouting department and a pro scouting department here on Football 301. My guy, Charles McDonald. How you doing today, Chuck? You got your voice back at the very least. I do know that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I did the money show last week. I got flooded with WhatsApp messages, text messages, DMs, like, holy shit, you feel like you're dying. And I was. Honestly, by the time I got home on Monday, I literally, I was speaking, just like little puffs of air were coming out. But we're back. We're back now. I was a little worried on Monday and Tuesday. I was like, might we going to talk on Thursday? But I am here, and I'm glad that we got through all this stuff because I feel like when you look at us, maybe we're wearing it a little bit. Maybe look a little tired, a little out of it, but we're still alive. We're still kicking. We're still here to bring you what you want, what you need.
Exactly. You realize why exhausted and exhaust, like a car exhaust, are similar words. I guess that's what you were spitting out. Your words. It was just exhaust. There was no gas by the end there. No, I know we pumped out those big boards. We got it right after the combine. We're gonna have a consensus board on Yahoo. It's a lot of fun. We'll be talking about some prospects at the end of the show, as we'll be doing for the next upcoming months, I should say. But free agency, though, that's how it goes. That's how the NFL schedule works. It goes Senior Bowl All-Star games, Shrine Bowl All-Star games, Combine. Okay, now free agency starts. And then we get back into the draft. But we're going to be looking at the defensive side of the ball today. Going to look at some of the top names, maybe some fits that we like, maybe some buyer beware of guys that maybe we're have some trepidation with, and maybe some under-the-radar players. That is usually one of my favorite segments to do every year because it's like all this useless pro film watching that I do throughout the year. Maybe a couple of these guys end up becoming something. So a lot of fun. I like doing these shows a bunch. But before that, we've had some interesting news this week. The Bears, probably reflecting what this offensive free agency class looks like, the Bears traded for both Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney. A couple day 3 picks for these guys. Different kind of flavors of players, kind of different timelines with their ability, with their injury history. Jonah Jackson was a one-time Pro Bowler with the Lions. When he's on the field and when he's healthy, high-end play, really good guard, one of the better guards out there. I'd say top 10-ish. But the thing is, just can't stay on the field. That's kind of been his MO throughout the year or throughout his career. Gets signed by the Rams last year. Gets beat out after he hurts his shoulder, stayed on the bench. They try to work him at center, ended up not working out. And instead of releasing him, trade him to the Bears. And then Joe Thuney, kind of the odd man out. The Chiefs have a lot invested in their offensive line. Creed Humphrey. Looks like they're tagging Trey Smith at right guard. At right tackle, they have Jawan Taylor they're already paying for. So looked like Joe Thuney ended up being the odd man out. Gets traded for a 4th-round pick to the Bears. Charles, when you saw these trades, what were some of your thoughts with it? And maybe kind of the Bears, as I've been kind of using the term no more half measures, was kind of my thoughts. But thoughts on the Bears trading for both of these players, and maybe your thoughts on Thuney and Jackson.
It's a good start, in theory. I think in practice, though, I don't know. The more I thought about it, like, man, this could get flimsy real fast. Because you just talk about Jonah Jackson in and out of the lineup basically his whole career, got beat out last year. I always tend to think like there's a reason why the Rams were willing to take a 6th-round pick back for someone they just paid last year. There's a little buyer's beware there. Probably he wasn't exactly what they'd hoped for. And with Joe Thuney, I think he's definitely still a good player. But even at his age, he's up to 33 or playing 34 this year. You're kind of in the danger zone of any year could be the last year. And maybe I'm just a little bit burned on this because I watched the Falcons trade for Matt Judon last year, and I saw how that went. Trading for an oft-injured veteran or a recently injured veteran is always a risky play. But when you look at where the Bears were last year, I mean, shoot, come on now. There's no way
Right.
you're going to be able to fix this in one offseason without making a couple trades, take a couple of risks on some veterans that maybe other teams didn't want anymore. So to get Thuney, like that's a good start. I don't really have any reason to believe that his play would drop off too far this year. It's just more like how long is he going to keep playing at a high level? And with Jonah Jackson, I think that could be a little bit buyer's beware there because some of the Rams fans I talked to were pretty happy to get that contract off the books. It seems like the Rams were really trying to get him out the door, so that's a little risky. But man, you just couldn't run it back with what they had. So on paper, if you can get another tackle like Will Campbell in the draft or something like that, that's not a bad like 4-man look. At least it's better than what you had last year. If you had Will Campbell, Jonah Jackson, Darnell Wright on the edge, so it's a start, but. I wouldn't say this is guaranteed to work out for the Bears.
Yeah, and for me, and then Jonah Jackson also has familiarity with Ben Johnson from Detroit, the new head coach for the Bears. They took on his contract this year, the Bears did, his base salary, which is usually what gets traded, and then his guarantee. So I think it's like $18 million this year, cap hit, and then it's off the books basically, or it's non-guaranteed after this year. So that's why I thought that was a nice low risk-ish type of deal where it could be nice if he does stay healthy and you're like, okay, we already got him under contract. We can just go with this. And then Thuney, older players, like you just said, like they just traded the third for Keenan Allen. It's like, it's a little scary when you're trading for a 30-something-year-old player. Thuney is interesting. Guards age well. He's only missed 2 games in his entire career. He's played 146 out of 148 games of his career. So if you are going to go for an older guy, that's the one you go for. The guys that never or always see the field, they're never on the bench. They had 3 open spots on their interior line: left guard, center, and right guard. They needed bodies to address this. I did a show earlier this week, a Chicago-based show, Hogan Johns, and God, sorry, Adam. But when we were doing the math on it, I'm like, man, I don't know where they can find 3 viable bodies. And this is how they had to do it. It's just a desperate market out there. Once we talk about the offensive free agency next week, you'll kind of see that. But this is a means to an end. I actually kind of like this. It's better than obviously what they had. These are much more talented players than kind of the half answers they had before. They got to figure out who plays center, and I think Ben Johnson has kind of talked a lot about that. Drew Dahlman is a buyer beware for me. I know we're talking defense today, but he is for me. But I get why they ended up coming to this. If they can get like Thuney on another, like an extension where he's under contract for maybe 1 more year, I'd really like it. But that's for them to figure it out. But I get why the Bears did this. They're desperate. They've had a bad situation there in years prior, and now they also get Joe Thuney as a leader. That's another thing, is that he is a true leader type, true locker room setter, offensive line room leader. That's really nice, especially when you're kind of revamping the whole team and trying to get that messaging. So totally get why the Bears did it. I think you could do a lot worse with day 3 picks. And of course there's risk to this, but I ended up liking this for the Bears. For the Chiefs with Thuney, I understand why. Someone had to get squeezed out. Kingsley Suamataia seems like is going to be their future left guard. I rewatched the Week 18 game, and he was pretty good in there. First play, he got blown up, and I was like, oh, God. But, he has talent. I was very high on him. He's young. There's a reason why they're moving on from Thuney, maybe for comfort level with that, too. But they got to figure out left tackle in some way, shape, or form. Is it Dan Moore? Is it the draft? There's a lot of cool, maybe late first-round tackle prospects that you and I both like. So, Andy Reid, his background's in O-line. He always makes sure to try and address that O-line some way, shape, or form. So I think they're going to have an answer, and maybe they're up to something.
Yeah,
Kansas City might be up to something. They might be up to something. That's what I'm kind of keeping. I want to put that in a pin in that. Like, they might do something weird next week, and I just want to see it.
Shoot, they got to add someone, man. You got to add someone. Because I mean, look, I think Kingsley. I would hope he's better than Caliendo, who they had at left guard.
Way more talented than our guy Caliendo.
Even then, the vast majority of the tape that Kingsley put out there last year was
not good.
We
talked about all playoffs. There's a reason they're playing Caliendo over Kingsley.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason. Yeah. So that's a little scary that they said, now he's our starter.
Right, exactly. Because, they pulled the plug fast on that early in the season. And understandably so. Like, he could not play. Yeah. And I say that someone who liked him pre-draft. He flat out could not play. It was like you're sinking the offense. So I find it a little dubious that he would just be able to go out there at guard and figured out that fast. I know Andy
Right.
Heck's a great offensive line coach, but to me, it's like, we're starting hell. We're just trying to climb our way back to Earth's surface before we get to heaven. Even that's going to take a while. But he's a talented guy. Maybe he can figure it out.
Yep.
But man, this is just it's just not where they need to be. So yeah, I'm with you. They got to do some big moves. I mean, even when they signed Joe Thuney, that was kind of surprised when that one happened. And look how well that turned out for them.
It worked out great.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, you got Mahomes. You just have to do better supporting cast wise. There's no reason for you to be in this spot when you have a quarterback that good. Like you're not some rebuilding team. You're someone who's going to be fighting for a Super Bowl every single year. You just have to do better than this.
Yeah, I know. I'm curious what they do in the next couple of weeks. But I'm very interested always in the Chiefs. But Bears kind of liked what you did there. I liked it. This is one way to figure out this problem that you guys have had for years. Other kind of news signings. Zach Bond resigns with the Eagles for 3 years, $51 million. I think that's well deserved. Kind of saw that coming. Also interesting. Some other players we're going to talk about the repercussions of that. Max Crosby signs as the highest paid non-quarterback with a $106 million extension, $91.5 million guaranteed. Justified. Who else are they going to pay? That's kind of where I was at. Some trade stuff, kind of, that's kind of where I'm at. Who else are they going to pay? And he's worth it. He's on the field all the time. Like, just one of those guys that's like, of course you want him on your team, like the locker room leader, all that production. I mean, just everything. So, of course, he's going to get paid that. I'm sure a lot of other edge defenders are very happy to see that, though. And then the last bit of news around the league is Seahawks released Tyler Lockett after 10 seasons, which kind of saw coming. But Lockett, also, this is my little sidebar, has my favorite 40 I've ever seen in person at the Combine. How most receivers take forever. They can make sure they're all set. Shoes are okay. Okay, hamstrings loose. Kick. Shimmy it out. He stands by the back pad where it says 40-yard dash, and they're like, all right, Kansas State, Tyler Lockett. And he just walks straight up to the line and goes. Like, he just goes, they're like, said his name, walks up to the line, got set, runs. And like everybody, it was fine. And everybody was like, oh shoot, you startled me. So that's my memory of Tyler Lockett. Had a great career. Maybe goes to Las Vegas. We'll see where he goes. But the other side news with Seahawks receivers, DK Metcalf requests a trade. What the Seahawks are asking for, I think Diana Rossini reported, was a first and a third. Good luck with that. But DK Metcalf requesting a trade. Any teams come to mind with Metcalf there, Charles? And what do you think is fair compensation maybe for him?
I mean, shoot, a lot of teams could definitely use him. The Packers are certainly one.
Yeah.
I mean, we think about kind of where they got mucked up late in the season. You need a go-getter. You need someone who's a little bit bigger, stronger, more talented than some of the guys that they have.
They need a man beater.
They need a man beater. Yeah. And they need a grown man out there too at wide receiver.
Yeah, they need a grown man. Really, though, they do.
He's a grown ass man. I think that would be a huge boost. Like the Chiefs are another one we just talked about.
Yeah.
Patriots make sense. Think Ian Rappaport, the Chargers too. Like all those teams make sense. I don't know. He's only 27. So if you're a team that feasibly has like a need for like a low end one or a high end two, that makes sense. Now it's just like the compensation. It's just like we're living in a world today where Tutu Atwell, who's like wide receiver 4 for the Rams, just got a $10 million contract. So, if you're DK, like
let that sink in. Let that sink in.
You gotta probably get like 30 at least.
Right. That's what he's asking for.
Shoot, it's a smart play, but if you're, I also understand like the apprehension to give him that too, because you could divvy out $30 million for someone whose production
a running back, a linebacker, a second receiver. I mean, yeah, you can split it up pretty easily. Yeah,
yeah. And, I know it's not always true, but I tend to look at wide receivers sometimes like your production is just so dependent on everything else working out right. Like you need the quarterback right, you need to be blocked up right, you need to be schemed right sometimes.
Yep.
I don't know. $30 million to me, it just seems like that should be the last piece. But if you're a team like the Packers or the Chiefs, then yeah, that possibly could be your last piece.
Right.
But I don't know if it makes sense. Like if you're a rebuilding team, just go out and make this trade right now. So I guess there was a report for a first and a third for DK Metcalf. That's insane to me. A first and a third plus a new contract. what are you, Jalen Ramsey?
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't think that's right at all. So, maybe like a second round pick, maybe
Yep.
a handful of thirds plus a new deal could get it done. But man, like a first and third plus $30 million multi-year $30 million contract, that's a pretty big expense.
Yeah.
Like we would need to be competing like right away to make that work.
I'm with you where I see DK as a real, ideally a high end too, like on a team. And like you say, he can be your one if you have other dudes with you, kind of a nice little room there of pass catchers, which like DK makes a lot more sense for the Packers than he does for a lot of other teams or the Patriots.
Yeah.
Is he going to be that AJ Brown trade where it's like, oh my God, like totally changes everything? I don't think he's anywhere near AJ Brown. It's kind of, they were teammates and everything too at Ole Miss, but I think Metcalf is just more, he has a limited route tree. But he is good at those routes that he is good at, and he can go and he can take the top off. And it's exactly what like teams like the Packers need. I'm with you too with that the chain of a play this is where my kind of positional value gets into is quarterbacks obviously are one, but then it's who's the player that can stop the quarterback's quickest, a pass rusher. So D end. Okay. Who's the guy that blocks that guy? Okay. Offensive tackle. Okay. Now if that's all blocked and you don't block the D end, who catches the ball? The receiver. So that's how I do my premium positions. It's like, and then who covers the receiver? The corner. So it goes quarterback. Okay. Pass rusher, blocker, receiver. So that's like fourth in my hierarchy of how I kind of look at positional value. That's just me. Mm-hmm. That's just how the math in my head works. But yeah, DK is an interesting case study. I'm curious where he ends up going. Interesting player that takes the top off. I think the Packers could really use him. The Chargers are really interesting too, but I actually don't think maybe I don't think he's worth a first at all. I think it's a third and a player or a second. That's what I would give up. I would say, hey, third, and if I was a Packers, here's a young receiver. Like that's what I'd be giving up to the Seahawks, but we'll see who ends up pulling the trigger.
Positional value stuff is always interesting because I've started to think of it more. I don't really care about the ranks as much, like quarterback or versus more about the scaling, like how much more. Because I've seen Jaxson Dart number 3 in a mock draft. That's crazy. Like that's what positional value has gone way too far. Where you're passing out on like several tiers player better to take a quarterback at 3. Then you need to start readjusting some of your thought processes. But in general, kind of to each their own. Just get some good players.
Yeah, get good players. Draft good players. All right. Speaking of good players, not a lot of them hit free agency actually, but there's some out here. Some guys are going to re-signing. We already mentioned Zach Bond, so we take him off the linebacker heap. But others get released. And we're going to be talking interior defensive lineman to start, and then edge players before we take our break. So we'll start with the interior defensive line. Milton Williams is going to be the big winner, I believe, in free agency. Not just me. I think everybody kind of sees how it's shaping up. He hit the market, did not get tagged. Only 2 players got tagged, which is the lowest since 2006, by the way. Trey Smith and T. Higgins, only 2 guys that got the tag. But Milton Williams, he was second according to Next Gen Stats. I've repeated this stat 500 times. I'm going to repeat it for the 501st time. He was second in pressure rate among interior defensive linemen last year, and had a nice playoff run, especially in the Super Bowl. Gets those pressures, doesn't have a high sack number, but is very useful against the run as well. He could play 3 tech at defensive tackle. He could play on the outside as well in different looks. He's really good on twists and games. Just a very good football player. Am I going to say he's going to sign somewhere to be a Pro Bowler next year? I'm not sure, but I think he's a very good starter, a good starter. If you have another good edge player, I'd love to put him, Milton, on the inside. He's not exactly a run plugger, but he is a great 3 tech and maybe a 3-4 defensive end if you have some other looks that you want to throw out there. But Milton Williams is going to be a big winner of free agency. Any team with money is probably going to be after him. I know Bengals are probably after him. Patriots are probably after him. Bears might be looking at him. I would like fits for all those places as well. Any thoughts on Charles, on Milton Williams, or any other kind of maybe the top defensive tackles or interior defensive linemen, as we call them now, this year's free agency class?
Well, you're falling off a cliff after Milton. Like,
yeah, I know. I got like 7 under we have a call, so everyone knows we have an under the radar section that we're going to talk about too, or other guys we want to talk about, and there I have like 7 there because there's not a lot of top market guys.
I don't really give a crap about any of these guys. Milton's going to get paid though. I
Yeah,
mean,
yes.
the franchise tag, or I guess this year, I guess most guys who would have hit free agency have already just been locked up by the team. So it's not the sexiest free agent class. Williams is going to get paid. Um, I think it's someone who could still be fine, like not playing next to Jalen Carter, playing next
Yeah.
to all those Eagles guys. He does enough to create on his own. Obviously, it helps when you can play on a group that talented because you're just going to see a lot more advantageous situations, and he's going to be in a spot on his next team where he's going to be a top dog. But I still think he'll perform well there, and he's someone that at least he can go out and get you some pass rush use and win some one-on-one matchups. So that's hard to find. It's even harder to find a free agency because usually teams aren't in a position where they can let someone like that walk. But he's going to end up getting a serious bag. And I, like you said, I think every team that has some money should try to sign him. You can never have enough guys up front on either side of the ball that can really, win games for you and turn the tide. So you should if you're a fan like of a team who has some cap space, you should be like imploring them to go after this guy. After that, like Jonathan Allen's probably one. He hasn't been cut yet, but
officially
they're
released.
doing the game like, he's been released yet, but they're doing the thing where it's like, oh, we're looking for a trade partner. If we can't find one, then we'll cut him, which like 85% of the time ends up in just someone getting cut. But he's still a starter.
Yeah, I know. That's the desperation news leak. Can we get a 6-rounder for him?
Just with Devontae Adams, and there was another player like last week that got cut where they were like dangling for trade pieces. I already forgot. But regardless, Jonathan Allen can be one if he hits when he hits free agency. And then if just like someone who's been around forever, just kind of doing mercenary stops 1 year, every single year, and I guess he's gonna keep playing. John Hankins, year
football 301 favorite.
Football 301 favorite. Year 13 of first down ministry. Just sit there, plug a gap, get the hell off.
Plug it.
Yep. that's
play your 15 snaps and get off.
Yep. And that he's about to turn 33, so that's like sneakily one of those spots where if you're strong though, you can play into your early 30s if you can just sit there and eat a gap. Because we're not asking you to get upfield, we're not asking you to eat TFL. We're asking you just to plug and sit on the line of scrimmage. So if you're a team that just needs a quick fix, like our run defense stunk last year, we just did a quick plugger. I think Hankins makes a lot of sense. I think he makes a lot of sense for Denver, which is interesting because I see DJ Jones is on our list too.
And similar skill set. There's a lot of kind of cool pluggers, I think, that are not as sexy, but there's some good ones actually. It's a good nose tackle plugger class. That's all I got for free agents. Yeah, but DJ Jones is one. Tier Tart from the Chargers. Bobby Brown from the Rams, who's a little younger. Roy Lopez is a personal favorite from the Cardinals because I gotta keep mentioning them. But DJ Jones, 30. Tier Tart, I really like. I thought he was gonna get paid a couple of years ago. I think he's got some character stuff. That's why he's been on like 4 teams in like a year. But he's a free agent. He did really well for the Chargers last year, really helping them out. So like Bobby Brown's interesting because he's young. He doesn't really fit what the Rams were trying to do. I don't know why. I'm curious if they try and bring him back. But he's 24 years old and he's a run plugger too. And then Roy Lopez is 27. But all those guys, I'm glad he brought up Hankins as well, because it's just like it's a good nose tackle like plugger class. Like all these guys are the same type, but just a little bit different flavors. Tart's probably the most violent. I would say DJ Jones is probably the best of this group overall, but he's 30. And then Brown's the youngest, but then Lopez has flashes. He was a find for the Cardinals. They got him from the Texans as like a practice squad stash, and he's just turned into like a nice solid player for them. But and go back to tie it all together. Milton Williams turns 26 next month. Like, so if you sign him, you get 20, say a 4-year deal, big money deal, 26, 27, 28, 29. That's ideal before he turns 30. And I'm sure he's happy about that too, to sign up another deal before he turns 30. But like, that's if you're going to splurge on a guy that might, yes, you're always going to overpay in free agency. At least Milton Williams has production, is young, sees the field, and like, you know, you get him in the prime of his career. So that's like another argument for him too. But yeah,
I asked Milton real briefly after the Super Bowl. It's like, so like you gone? And he's like, you know, we got the ring. We're going to see what happens next. Like, all right. Go get paid, young man. Go get paid.
Hometown discounts are one thing, but when it's like a $10 million a year difference, it's
I just got the ring, you know.
Yeah, yeah, good way to end out. I know, and then the Eagles can replace him with Moro Ojomo, who had a really nice Super Bowl as well, so that's why they can keep churning. But let's bump on over to the edge class, which is interesting. You got Khalil Mack, kind of he's in the mercenary role of his career, still a very good player. I mean, shoot, he can get a multi-sack game. He can force fumbles. He's always going to be good against the run as he ages. And I think the pass rush production will kind of come and go. But man, he could be a really fun mercenary for someone. Josh Sweat, also another player for the Eagles that had a great Super Bowl, going to get paid, it seems like, as well. Hassan Reddick, former Eagles find. Then with the Jets had, you're on Hassan Reddick watch. So I might have you take him, and then Deo Odeingbo from the Colts, who started his career injured, started coming along as kind of a rotational rusher for the Colts. Really is going to get paid too. There's rumors out there. Tom Pelissero said he's going to get paid way more than you think he was, which is it's going to be surprising. But I like him as a rotational guy, maybe a number 2 ideally for somebody, but just a little bit of like. Maybe not too much money there. And then Joey Bosa got released by the Chargers as well as a cap casualty. But any of these guys, Charles, stand out to you that maybe you think are a fun fit somewhere, or someone that like you really particularly like or want to talk about?
I'll say this. I'm really happy for Chase Young that he's been able to turn this around. Because man, like I really hope that the way his career has turned out so far retcons like what we were saying about him coming on the draft. Like that guy was a monster at Ohio State.
Oh yeah,
and he looked poised to kind of take over when he first got to the NFL. Got banged up a bunch. It kind of seemed like he was just in limbo a little bit, but he really bounced back with the Saints. You know, I think he's put himself in position
nice year.
to actually get a nice contract this offseason. He's still only 25, turns 26 in a couple of months, so you know, there's a lot of juice left to squeeze there. He should be able to play for a good long while. He played well last year. You know, well against the run, was a good pass rusher. So I'm happy that started to turn back around, and he's turned to a starting caliber player that people are trying to pay to have start for their team. So and he gets to get out of New Orleans because I know damn sure they can't afford to pay him. So that's. That's good vibes for Chase Young. Bad vibes for Hassan Reddick. We were talking about it all offseason. Like it was just the worst, most uncoordinated holdout I think I've ever seen. Because no agent worth a damn is going to tell you, bro, what you need to do is you're Hassan Reddick. You need to skip like all the way. It's like October. Because no, they're trying to get paid too. So they're going to be a little bit realistic about what your chances are to get that bag you were chasing. Woody Johnson stepped in at some point and worked through the contract with Hassan Reddick. And he showed up not in great shape and was inserted directly into the starting lineup. Bro, you wouldn't you wouldn't even realize that he was out there for most of the plays.
Right.
And like you just think about like if he had handled this differently last summer, he would have made so much more money than he's currently slated to make now. Because I mean maybe like if you can get him back in and you sign him to a 1-year deal, I can't imagine he's more than 1 year, and you get him back into the building for like a full offseason, full regiment, a full training camp, maybe you can tap back into some of it. But especially in football, the idea to be that you could just fall off that hard and take a step back and not do things you're supposed to need to, and then just hop right back into it and be like, okay, I'm good. I'm ready to go. 10 sacks again. No, I think he actually like detonated the end of his own career. But what he did last year. But you know, someone will sign him because teams are desperate for pass rushers. It'll probably be the
Mhm.
Falcons. Yeah, not that's not source. It's just what they do, kind of. It's just what they do. So,
Name
uh,
recognition.
yeah, we're gonna go get our next Ray Edwards or Matt June honors, something like that. Yeah, that's what they're
I always
doing.
Dwight Freeney worked out.
Yeah,
No, it's yeah,
well,
no,
Bully Big Blue
especially his
Blaze
game.
cared about football for one season.
Oh God, yeah. No, and Reddick's game is predicated on twitch, and speed, and that's why it's always scary when guys are just like rely on that and other things. So, I know Khalil Mack is just the name that just keeps drawing my attention because of just where he's at in his career and how productive he is. But like teams like the 49ers or the Cardinals or the Packers, the Lions, the Ravens, the Bills, like he should truly just be a mercenary and go like, who wants me for this 1 year deal to make a push, baby? Like, I feel like he should just have so many 1, maybe 2 year deals out there. So that's why I just keep coming back to Sweat is good, but scary. Like, because I mean, the Eagles gave him a salary cut this year, but before this year they agree to, like, so it's like, are you betting more on how he produced in the playoffs and the Super Bowl, or more of what he really looks like? He's a good, solid starter, but like one that's likely to be overpaid. So I'm curious just where he ends up. I do like him. I do think he's a good player, but it's just one of those where I don't think he's a star. Obviously, that's why he's a free agent. And then, Bo says it's going to be interesting. I'm glad he brought up Chase Young. I think he's my favorite under the radar guy. So we'll talk about some of those guys. Same time teams I just brought up. The 49ers tried to do the Chase Young thing before. Maybe they try to do it again. But any of those teams that need that kind of mercenary type, Chase Young's going to be, I think, can be off 1-2 year deals. I'm with you. He racked up a lot of pressures last year for the Saints, and sometimes goes rogue. Like he'll cut inside when he shouldn't, but maybe when he's on like a good defense, a good team, maybe a little more discipline, a little more structure. This guy was with one of the worst franchises for a while with Washington, blew up his knee, had bad injury, goes to 49ers, kind of does some things, but it's up and down. That's mid-season. Goes to New Orleans, which is just it's the Saints. It's kind of just a lost year. Still produces. And so I want him again with like a winning team, maybe winning culture, and just see what he does there. But the last one I'll throw out there, or two more I'll throw out there, Malcolm Kuntz from the Raiders had some nice moments, also got injured. So that's another guy kind of curious where he ends up, but he could be a guy that outplays his contract if he doesn't get overpaid because he was starting to do some things. And then the last one is DeMarcus Lawrence, who is another elder statesman. I believe DeMarcus Lawrence is 33 right now, about to turn 33. I know. And he's coming off a Lindsfrank injury.
I remember when he was in college. Like I remember watching him
at Boise. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had him for a visit with the Falcons. And what turned off the people in the Falcons was that he was having his draft day party here in Vegas. I shit you not. That was like a character knock on him. Yeah. No. Yeah. Those are discussions that happen in draft rooms. And now he's like Walter Payton. Now he's like Walter Payton Man of the Year for the Cowboys, like multi-time, like all because they're like one of the best community guys. So yeah. Goes to show you scouts aren't.
Yeah. It's so funny where they choose to do the character stuff and where they didn't choose to. Right. It wasn't like it was a full on. We're not taking these guys. There's just we're going to take some idiots, but they're also going to be bad players.
I know. Yeah, you draft the idiots that are good players. That's you don't want worse of both worlds. But I like Lawrence as like a rotational guy at this stage in his career, but he's so good against the run too. So it's like I don't know. I think he can give you a good 20, 25 snaps if you get him on a right deal. But that's another guy I just had to throw out there because I've always been a big fan of DeMarcus Lawrence. All right. Got done with the defensive line. We're going to take our first break, and then we're going to come back with the linebackers and the defensive backs of free agency. All right, we are back. Moving to off-ball linebackers, because that's how we do it now. Kind of annoying. Some of the places you still sort by linebacker, and they have guys listed at outside linebacker and their edge players. Still a little annoying. I'm not going to lie. But anyways, off-ball linebackers, always an interesting group because you can find your Zach Bonds. You can find guys that work for you as 1-2 year stopgap types. Not everyone's a system fit. Not everyone works for everybody. But then you'll find guys like Azeez Al-Shaair who can be a tone setter for your defense like the Texans had. You can find these types. So at the top of the class, Dre Greenlaw from the 49ers, who hurt his Achilles in the last year's Super Bowl, came back the last month of the season, actually looked okay, which is astounding to me that he's 10 months off an Achilles and actually looked like an okay starter, much better than Devondre Campbell, who was also a free agent that we will not be talking about in this segment. Might have been blackballed from the league after how he did with the 49ers last year. Then we got Nick Bolton, linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs. Nice, smart player. I would say more of a run-first defender. Okay in coverage, can kind of get caught a little bit. But those are the two at the top of the market. Want to dive into either of these guys or want to get to the under-the-radar guys, Charles? Greenlaw's fun. If Greenlaw's healthy,
that's good.
He's a good player.
Good. Bolton, I don't know.
Not for everybody. That's why
it's a big fireware for me.
Just go back to the Chiefs, Nick. We're good. Everybody's happy. Go back to Spags, and you guys are good.
Bolton's the one where I can see, a team handing him a big bag and a year and a half saying like, oh, this guy can't do
shoot
as we thought he could. Not that he's a bad player, to me that's just not the linebacker that I would be chasing in free agency. The one under the radar guy and this one I don't even know.
I feel like this is better section for this guy is under the radar.
The one under the radar guy that I had, and to be fair, I don't know how much of it is going to translate to a next team if he goes to another team. Eric Wilson from the Packers last year. Yeah, he had some nice moments.
They might have re-upped him. Well, let me just double check.
He's 30. I don't know if he's someone that you're just going to bank on like starting, but maybe if you need like a quick fix for a year or you need some depth, that's not bad because he had some moments for the Packers last year, especially as Edgerrin Cooper was kind of getting up to speed before he really took over. So I think that's one. Oh man, outside of that. I think Tyrell Dotson looked a little better in Miami than he did in Seattle, but even then,
he did.
You talk about a guy who'll be on like his third team in a calendar year, so like that's a little scary too. But hey, man, we
context clues.
Context clues. Right. We have talked so much about it's getting harder to find these guys in the draft, and over time, it's going to matriculate through the pipeline into free agency, right? When you start looking at free agency, like, damn, where are all the linebackers? They're not really being made like that anymore. But beggars can't be choosers, so we got to find something, right? So I'll go with Dotson, kind of maybe, and Eric Wilson. But outside of that, man, you're really grasping here.
Yeah, for me, it's a kind of a lot of like, he did some nice things, which is like Robert Spillane for the Raiders, formerly of the Steelers. That's the one that like I actually think he's a pretty solid starter. I think he's battled injuries too. Yeah, well, where's 41, which I never agree with. Kamara's the only guy that's made 41 look cool. But he's one that I think could be a decent, solid starting linebacker for somebody. So that's one that I would throw as an under the radar guy that someone could get for cheap. Jamie and Sherwood apparently is going to get paid. That was another name that's getting thrown out there. I think of him as a headhunter. He's kind of a guy that injures players. Like that's how I remember Sherwood, but he could be a tone setter. That's how those Jets guys are. But I think that's another one that's interesting, of this group. I wouldn't say he's good, but I thought he was interesting. He's not bad. Like he could be a viable starter. Kaiser White, I think should just go back to Arizona. He's battled injuries and stuff. Before he got hurt last year, he was looking so good. But I don't think he's going to go anywhere. The defensive coordinator, Nick Rawlis, named his newborn son. His middle name is Kaiser. So I don't think Kaiser White's going anywhere. if again, we're talking about context clues. Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere. And then the last one is a Badger, Jack Sanborn, who kind of, I'm surprised. I thought he's a restricted free agent. I thought they were going to just re-up him and they let him hit free agency, which kind of surprised me. I think he's a good starter. I like him. And he's a 4-3 linebacker. He can do some stuff on ball as well, but he's one that I think someone could find like for a cheap contract and get a starter there. He's not gonna be great in coverage, but I think he's actually okay and he's good against the run and he's a decent enough athlete. So former Badger as well. But yeah, Jack Sanborn had to throw that in there. But that's what you're dealing with linebackers, man. It's not all these guys aren't for everybody. Scheme fits aren't great. You got to see what the rest of your front seven and your back seven looks like, because defenses are so creative now. So, none of these guys are going to look like the traditional dudes, unless you look at the draft and look at Jahad Campbell. But like these guys, it's just kind of like, all right, squint and maybe see a starter there. But
and
a little more. Oh, sorry.
I was about to say, you talk about Jahad Campbell, and we were talking about like positional value like earlier in the show. It becomes to me, it's become a scarcity thing, right? Like because we had Fred and Roquan. Roquan fell off last year. Yeah. It's just Fred. Like at the top, we're talking about sustained excellence over the past handful of years at linebacker. Fred's the top dog right now. So if you have one of those guys, and like 28 teams are looking for one of those guys, that should make someone like Jahad Campbell more valuable to me.
I totally get that argument.
It just seems like people haven't quite gotten there with linebackers, but man, we've seen for forever, how like a truly like dominant linebacker talent can change your defense and make things a whole lot better. Like saw the boost the Ravens got when they got Roquan. We talk about Fred, like guys like Luke Kuechly, Patrick Willis, and Bobby Wagner when he was at his peak. These are like real deal game changing talents. If there are fewer and fewer of them, you think the ones that pop up should be valued a little bit higher, but I don't know. I'm just a college dropout.
I'm with you. I'm with you because it's just like Fred Warner. In baseball they use the term replacement level WAR. Wins above replacement. Like, isn't Fred Warner above a replacement level linebacker like 7 wins more than a middle tier linebacker? So I'm right there with you. There's other positions too that kind of comes up too, like even tight end. And that's why the receiver argument's always like, well, I can find this guy in round 3. I can find Puka Nacua in round 5. I can find Chris Godwin in round 3. I can find these guys. I'll take a top 10 pick to find a starting viable number 1 receiver. Like CeeDee Lamb was not the first receiver picked. AJ Brown was a round 2 guy, so I can find these receivers, but I'm with you on the linebacker stuff. I'm trying to gauge it too. All right, let's go on the back end. We're going to corners. Little interesting class. Top of the class, you got DJ Reed from the Jets, Javarius Ward for the 49ers, Rasul Douglas for the Bills, Carlton Davis the third from the Lions. DJ Reed is guy of this group I really like. I think he's just a very good corner. Ideally, he is your number 2 like he was with the Jets, opposite of Sauce Gardner. But man, like if you got nobody, he could be a low end 1 for you. I do think that he can live in man coverage. Because they ran so much it wasn't man, but there's some man rules with some of the stuff how they do. They're basically locked on the outside receiver. So I don't want to get too deep into it, but he's a good starting corner. Again, these guys drop off a cliff once they hit 30. So that is the buyer beware always with corners is once they hit 30, hold on to your hats. So hopefully they have other aspects that can, let them be a good player. But Reed is the one I think is the prize of this group, even if he is maybe ideally high end number 2. Travarius Ward's interesting, but it's more, he went through a lot of personal struggle, family stuff this last year. So just got to make sure where his headspace is, because I totally understand if he's kind of just like, all right, I got to think about things. Rasul Douglas, nice moments. With the Bills, I like him. I think he's a solid starter. Again, these guys are creeping towards 30. And then Davis, you know what you're getting. Feisty man coverage, a lot of penalties, tone setter on the back end. He's going to get hurt. Those are the guarantees. Feisty man coverage, penalties, going to get hurt. That's Carlton Davis. I want him on my team, but you have to know that you're going to have a number 3 to step up for him at some point in the year. So that's kind of the top end of the corner class. But what are some of your thoughts on this class, Chuck?
Man, when you said DJ Reed, I started laughing because every time I hear his name, I think about it at the end of the season. Like it must have been like 3 or 4 weeks left of the season. He was like, "Man, I'm out of here. I'm done. I'm done. All I can do
which
here."
Is funny which is funny because him and Aaron Glenn are like 2 peas in a pod. Like so it's funny that now I'm getting out of here. When you finally get a coach that works for you.
but hey, look at the rest of the roster, man. I understand we're creeping towards 30. We got to get something done before this is over. The Jets are about to start from scratch again. But yeah, I'm with you on the assessment. He's a low on 1. ideally a high end too. When Sauce was locked in like 2 years ago, and he was having like all pro caliber season, like DJ was the perfect person to have across from him. So, even if you don't have a guy, like it's still worth it to just see if you can get him just to start adding pieces to your cornerback room. So I think he's a good fit for just about most teams that need a starting cornerback. Byron Murphy's another guy.
Because how many teams have two good corners? Like 4,
right? Yeah.
So name 20-something teams, and he's a good fit. Yeah.
Byron Murphy, he's probably out to get paid too. Made the Pro Bowl this year. He was actually younger than I remember him being. He just turned 27. I don't know why I thought he was. He was a little bit older than that.
I feel like he's been around forever.
We talked about the Vikings defense and maybe like their lack of blue chip talent. He was definitely one of those guys that, in an ideal world, they would love to bring back. I don't know if they'll be able to figure it out financially, because things have gotten a little bit tight around there. But still, it is kind of rare to see, like a really good quality starting outside corner, like firmly in the middle of their prime, hit free agency like this. So, I think he's in a really good spot to end up getting paid again this offseason. So we'll see where that goes. I would love to see him back with the Vikings defense, but I just don't know if that's actually going to happen.
He's asking for 20 mil, so I don't think it's going to happen.
His contract says 22 million valuation. Yeah.
Really? I mean, it's a great shot. He was Pro Bowler last year. They signed him from the Cardinals as kind of it was a risk. It was a risk reward signing. Like he obviously has been talented. He's played outside. He's played in the slot. He's good in man. He's good in zone. No, it's a good shot. I can't believe I didn't see him at the top, because Murphy is a quality starting corner. Like he could be a 1. So that's another guy thrown out there. It's just that, it's going to be 1, you have to know the injury risk when you sign him. And then 2, know that he's asking for a lot of money. And there's not a lot of top corners out there. So, no, that's another one especially to throw out there, because he is twitchy. He's got good ball skills. And honestly, playing in an aggressive defense like that, he's had to do a lot of funky looks. So that also is just an appeal. And then prior to that, when he was with Arizona, same kind of thing. If you're a blitz-happy defense, he was used to that with when Vance Joseph was a defensive coordinator. He was used to that stuff too. So good shot there. Some of the under-the-radar guys, Asante Samuel Jr., who else we got in here? Mike Hilton, who's a slot for the Bengals, really good slot player, also a guy that usually battle injuries because he's undersized, but just good tone setter. Nate Hobbs from the Raiders. Isaiah Rodgers for the Eagles, who was like their dime back. He played like 1 play in the Super Bowl, but it was a good play. So I wanted to throw him out there. And then Paulson Adebo from the Saints, good player too, but battle injuries. I believe he broke it. What did he break? His fibula last year? Oh, his femur last year. Even worse. No, that was nasty. But yeah, I had to bring him because he's talented too. And that's another guy. Corners is hard because I've always referenced them to like pitchers in baseball. It's like, you know which guys are talented. It's like, can they stay healthy? Can they, keep the production consistent? Because it's such a volatile position. So you have to, and all these guys are perfect for everyone. So it's also like, sometimes guys, you're going to sign a guy and you'll have a drop off year. You just want to make sure they just don't sink completely. That's just kind of how these kind of guys go. Any other under the radar guys that you want to throw out there? I still love your Murphy shout because I should have talked about him at the top.
I think that might be all I got as far as cornerback goes.
Yeah.
I don't know how much
these guys don't hit free agency. It's hard.
No,
If
you got one of those guys, why the hell would you ever let him hit free agency unless you can't afford to pay him?
Right. Murphy hit it free agency because he kept getting hurt with the Cardinals. So like that totally makes sense why he kept hitting it. So all right, we'll go to the back end, which is safety. And safety's fun because safety is a lot about team fit and scheme fit and everything. So guys can get unlocked. I remember I did a study like 2 years ago, I think 17 safeties got an all pro vote a couple of years ago, just to kind of show you like how many guys can tangibly affect the game, of 64 starting safeties plus guys that play the slot or dime looks, they play in the box. So the guy at the top, Javon Holland from the Dolphins, good player. Probably will find some money. I don't know if they dropped the Christian Wilkins line with him that he's earned the right to test free agency, but they kind of said the same thing about him. Justin Reed for the Chiefs, who's a personal favorite, really good tackler, really smart player. Like if you're a defense, he won't go there, but like the Saints could desperately need him or desperately use him, replacing Tyrann Mathieu, which funny enough. But to solidify your back end, a versatile defender, also a really smart defender. That's why Spags loves him as well. I hope he goes back to the Chiefs, but he has hit the market. That's a guy that I really think if you need someone to really shore up your defense and get a guy that's really cerebral, that's Justin Reed. Like, I mean, there's a whole bunch of teams that could use a guy like this of this caliber. Shoot, the Ravens, if they want to get a guy that Justin Reed makes a ton of sense for them as well. And then Talanoa Hufanga from the 49ers battled injuries last year, came back midway through the year. Heat-seeking missile, boom bust safety, but again, another tone setter, supposed to be a great dude as well. And then the last guy I want to throw in here is Jeremy Chin from Washington, who a unique skill set. I thought Washington used him perfectly last year, plays in the box well, versatile kind of guy, just always around the football, just always a good tackler, just does a lot of things well. So safety is just a fun class. Like you can technically say all these guys are under the radar, because I think Holland will get paid. But other guys will kind of just be, it's got to be perfect for the defense that they're going to and everything. And then Cameron Bynum from the Vikings as well. I got to throw him out there. What's your thoughts on the safety class, though, Charles, as we wrap up the defense?
I actually like this class. I like it.
I do too.
And I'm going to just cut and paste everything you said about Justin Reed and staying with the same team he was with and apply it to Trevon Moehrig, the safety from the Raiders.
Yeah. Great call.
He's 25. He's hitting unrestricted free agency. It's funny though because he was a guy I remember like draft coverage wise. He had a ton of hype coming into the league. And I still think that hype has largely been justified. But the problem is he fell into the black hole. It's not
the black hole.
It's Mark's black hole, which is something that no one's watching anymore.
Yep.
So I don't. Because I think people they might be a little surprised when they see how much he gets paid in a couple of weeks. How many teams are going after him because he's I don't know how to describe it other than he just gets it. Like he's just a really good football player with a lot of football ahead of him. Patrick Graham and Moehrig, they've been a great fit together. And Moehrig's one of those guys he can play a whole lot of different spots for you on defense, which is. That really aligns with what someone like Patrick Graham and how he's going to call their defense. So I would love to see him back with the Raiders. Well, that might be a bit strong. I would like to see him back playing with Patrick Graham.
There you go.
Both of those guys could go somewhere else other than the Raiders together.
You like it a lot more.
That's the ideal scenario. But, I think he's a really good player. I don't know what their conversations are looking like with him. I would imagine they're starting to look at it a little bit like it's getting tight. We got Wilkins, we just paid Crosby. Are we going to add another big contract here when we still kind of need some help at other spots? Maybe that's could end up seeing him go to another team, but that's a really good player. That's like an instant starter, a long-term starter. And I think he's one of the better players in the free agency this year. And then the other guy, I think he's got better football in him than he played last year. Javon Holland, who is clearly on his way out the door from the Dolphins. I think reported teams so far, I think the Panthers were one of them. I don't remember the other. But he's a guy that can start, and if you can get back to like 2023 or even like the first half of 2024 with him before it all kind of fell apart, not just for him, for like kind of the whole Dolphins defense. That's a good player to have.
Yeah. I know teams like the Broncos probably can use one of these guys. Panthers, I'm glad you brought that up. Chargers is another team that maybe came to mind with some of these guys too. But no, Moehrig that's a great call because he did have hype and he's actually been a good player. And I feel like it's my first time people are talking about him again in like 3 years because that's what happens with all these Raider guys. So no, great shout out there. The last guy, and then there's like Harrison Smith is out there as well. He's old, he's 35, but smart player. Then Andre Sisco. From the Jags is also kind of an under the radar guy, but Jags are letting him go. Hit earned the right to test free agency for a reason. I just always love that phrasing. But yeah, that's it for the defensive free agents. We're going to take our last break, and we're going to come back with some prospects that we've been watching this week. We're panning for prospects here on Football 301, a little segment where we talk about a guy that we've been watching recently and have some thoughts on. We're during the next month or two, we're going to have more focused positional breakdowns on this show, quarterbacks, receivers, defensive players, all that good stuff. But this is where we just want to highlight one or two players, because Chuck and I just did big boards, so we want some extra credit here. But Charles, who is the first prospect?
Come on, we did this.
I know, boards. Man. It's like, I did all this work. I'm going to talk about these damn guys. So, Charles, who's the first prospect that you panned for this week? Who you wanted to talk about?
I was talking to you the other day about this tight end, and I was undecided on whether or not I wanted to drop the comparison for him that's been sticking in my head over the past couple of months. But then the combine happened, and the numbers were so similar that I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green. He led the NCAA this year in catches, or was it yards?
Mm-hmm.
Both? Was it both?
Yeah,
I know. Yeah. He led college football in one of those for sure. I think it was reception. He's it's like 6'3", maybe a little close to 6'2" and 7/8. 245, 250 range, run high. He run in that high 4.6, low 4.7 range, just like a former tight end for the Patriots who had his prime cut short by some horrible decisions that he made off the field and is no longer with us. I think you can figure out who the hell I'm talking about. He had his face plastered all over some fake Madden video game covers back in the day when Madden 25 for Life came out, in 2013, 2014. And that's where we'll stop the comparisons, because I don't want to insinuate
this is strictly on field and physical with Harold.
I don't think Harold Fannin is anything like Aaron Hernandez off the field. I think you're responsible to say anyone that I know or have even heard of. It's like Aaron Hernandez, outside of their daily lives. But I do think the way that he plays the game and the way they can be deployed is kind of similar. Because it's just, like Harold, I think he's a really good yards of the catch guy. Even for someone who's not like a true burner and he's not the biggest guy, I think he's just got a really good feel for what to do, like when the ball is in his hands. That's kind of it feels like a little narrative-y, a little too anecdotal, but I really do think that when you watch him run and you watch production, you watch how Bowling Green used him, it was like, this is kind of similar to how the Patriots used Aaron Hernandez back when they had him and Gronk, just like absolutely.
And Urban Meyer.
And Urban Meyer too. Right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I need to look at it again, but I know that Harold did touch the ball a little bit in the backfield. Yes, he did. So, and he had in college.
He got some handoffs. Yep.
Yeah, he had, for his total career, he had 33 carries, 159 yards, 5 touchdowns. Last season, he led the NCAA in receptions and yards. So, there have been some, I think, some concern that he didn't come out and run like a blazing 4.5. Because when you look at the size, you look at production, you're kind of expecting someone to be a lot faster than that. But for where he's at, like physically, man, he just gets a whole lot of things done on the football field. I think Hernandez was probably a little bit of a better athlete. He ran a little bit quicker in the 40, but their agility times are about dead even. Their 10-yard splits the exact same. Their body wise, I think Harold Fannin has maybe half an inch on Aaron, but they're about the same weight. It's really kind of uncanny physically how they're built, almost the exact same player. And man, if you can get Harold Fannin on day 2 and just kind of get him into the system and just be like, okay, what works for us? As you get used to the speed of the NFL,
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways he can get the ball in his hands, man. It kept bringing me back to this, like, man, you don't usually have a tight end like this where you're trying to figure out like how many different ways can I get the ball in his hands. But there was one guy that came to my mind, and let's just leave the comparison right there.
You threw that in a group chat we're in, and I was like, oh yeah, that's it. Because even Hernandez ran weird because they're both duck footed, like duck footed feet out, like they both run that. Well, when Kyle Shanahan came to the Falcons, they had the coaches. I've told you the story about the Earl Thomas clips and everything, but they would have the coaches come in and say basically who's their ideal version at every position. And Kyle Shanahan had Owen Daniels, who's actually who I compare Colson Loveland to, and Aaron Hernandez as the best kind of route runners, body control guys. And then Kyle, even at the time, was just like, hey, this is just on-field stuff, guys. Like, I just want to show you some clips of him running like an out route. And that's kind of, I couldn't believe you brought that in because I was like, yeah, I get this. I get where you're going with this because Fannin's not a tight end. He's his own thing. And I'm not saying like offensive weapon or anything. He's an H-back. He's a adjuster. An adjuster is the second tight end. It's the fullback. It's the off-ball guy that moves around the formation. He just does a lot well. He catches everything. He would just get open. Like you said, he creates some yards after the catch, even if it's not pretty, through body control and his balance and everything. So that was the thing with Aaron Hernandez. He was always balanced when he ran routes. Like it was just like this wide route running. It wasn't just how you picture a route. It was his own thing. And that's kind of how Fannin is. He's his own thing. So I love this comparison just because of what he is. He didn't make my top 50, but when we update and do like top 75, Fannin will make that. But I just think of him as a round 3, goes to a creative coach. You're not going to use him perfectly as an inline tight end, but he's an okay blocker actually. But you just use him in his own way, and I think he could be a fun 25, 30 snap guy for you and just be like a fun role player, like a super role player for somebody that knows how to use him creatively. I keep picturing him with a Shanahan offense and not using him as like a true fullback, but basically in that fullback, Alec Ingold, Kyle Juszczyk kind of role where you kind of just do a little bit of everything. So that's kind of how I picture him anyways.
I was stuck. Like that was one of like the last cuts I made because I really do like his game. I really
do too. He's just unique. It's so weird.
So weird. Yeah. I mean, just to be clear, because there's a lot of praise here going on. I think the way we're talking about, maybe you would think we have him ranked a little bit higher. I got a little questions about like, how did you end up at Bowling Green, man? There's some
that
stuff.
Too.
I think with his
and production in Ohio.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why didn't you transfer anywhere after a sophomore year? Grades. Yeah, no, sorry, I keep cutting you off. But yeah, it's a little
right because you look at his stats page. This was not the first year. This is not the first good year he had. As a sophomore, 623 yards, another 41 yards on the ground, 6 touchdowns. At Bowling Green as a sophomore, I know you had someone calling you, man. Someone saying here's a little NIL money if you want to come get it, but. Stayed at Bowling Green for years and just absolutely blacked out last year. So maybe just a couple questions about that. But man, I really think he's a good football player, and he'll be in the 50s for sure when we drop that top 75.
Fun. Yeah, no, I'm glad you talked about him because he's worth talking about because he's just such a fun player. It's hard. So Hernandez was a unique player too. That's why Hernandez went in the 4th round, 113th overall. And you're bringing up the backfield stuff because of how like McDaniels and O'Brien used him was like really creatively put him in the backfield, give him tosses and stuff. It was cool stuff. Mm-hmm. So, good comparison. I'm glad you threw that out there. I'm going to go with my next one, or we'll snake draft it. Jalen Noel, receiver, Iowa State. Not Noel, Noel, which is going to bug me for the next 10 years if I watch this guy. Jalen Noel. Iowa State has 2. Yeah, it should be Noel, right? I know, but then I listen to every commentator, everything. It was Noel. I know. So there we go. But Jalen Noel, receiver, Iowa State. He has a teammate, Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. If you watch these two, and if you know anything about how I evaluate guys, you would think that I would prefer Higgins. Higgins is the former basketball player. He's a dunk artist. He's all that. Noel, though, is measured at 5'10", probably going to play around 190-something pounds. there's just something to this guy. He is, I think, ideally how he gets used in the NFL would be almost like Christian Kirk, slot, vertical, intermediate guy. But this guy is a better returner. This guy does a lot of the in-between stuff better than Christian Kirk. And that's why I really like him. I snuck him into my top 50, which I actually even surprised me. He's right now receiver 5 on my big board. Probably maybe will end up there. We'll see. But this is a guy that I think just does a lot well. He's a good route runner. His body control is really good and stands out. His hands are really good. He doesn't have long arms. He has sub 30-inch arms, so that's a little bit of a red flag for me. But he has such good hand-eye coordination, such good body control that he can extend as long as those 29 and 3/4-inch arms can go and just snag everything. He's better on deep balls and better on 50-50 catches than Higgins, who's the former basketball player and 4 inches taller, 5 inches taller. And that's what really stood out to me. And he's a really good blocker. So that's another difference with him and like a guy like Christian Kirk, where he can do the vertical, do the intermediate stuff, can create a little bit of yards after the catch. He's good at punt returner, good at kick returning. But on top of it, he does the dirty work, which is a prerequisite nowadays in the NFL. You can't just hide these little 5'10", 5'11" slot guys anymore. Like, you just can't do it. You need these guys to get dirty and do stuff. And he can. I would say one blemish is how he does against press and maybe outside all the time. But I don't know. When I saw clips of him against press, he was winning. So maybe not as worried. I'm not as worried about that as maybe I thought going in. But I really like this guy. I think he's a number 2. He runs a little bit like Roman Wilson last year from Michigan that the Steelers drafted in round 3. Kind of has that movement and catching ability, but he's got some juice. He tested really well, which matches the eye test. He's got some real burst yards after the catch as well. That's why he's a good returner. I think he's a smart player as well. Just a guy that does a lot well and checks a lot of boxes that I think he could be a really good secondary pass catcher for somebody, do all the in-between stuff. So I want to give Jalen Noel, not Noel, Noel, a little shout here from Iowa State. Top 50 player for me right now.
We'll see about that. It might be Noel. I don't know. I might just keep calling him Noel.
It's bugging me, but I watched. So I even went back and watched like game commentary because I was just like, all right, how's it? It's Noel. Like every commentator was saying Noel, so whatever. So we'll see Noel. I think you're gonna say we'll see about that, about my evaluation of him, that you hated him or something.
No. My brain goes into bit mode sometimes. I was thinking, let that dude catch a touchdown on Christmas. You're never gonna be Noel. So just to give you combine stuff, so he measuring at 5'10", 194. So I like my guys to be at least 190. So he cuts that off right there, or he makes that threshold right there. Ran a 4.39 in the 40. Not everything, but he plays like a 4.44 guy, 4.45 guy. Good 10-yard split, had a 41-inch jump, 41 and a half, 11.2 broad. He did the 3 cone at 6'8". He did 23 reps on the bench. So he tested really well, and he plays that way too. You better get 20-something reps if you have tiny arms, by the way, or short arms, by the way. But Jalen Noel, gotta give him a shout. But let's wrap it up. You got one more guy here, Charles. We're supposed to do one, but we each did 2. Who is your second guy that you wanted to talk about? Jaxson Dart from Ole Miss. I just don't want to be mean. Not. I don't want to be mean to Jaxson.
You're in a safe space. You're in a safe space.
Yeah, I don't have a problem being mean to other people. But the players, like Jaxson did not put himself number 3 in a mock draft to the Giants. Jaxson didn't do that, so I should direct my ire to someone who actually did that and is placing those what I would call flatly unreasonable and unfair expectations of him to be one of to draft him before Travis Hunter. What? Like what? The mock drafts are like
and Abdul Carter and
Abdul Carter, Will Campbell, Bimbao, Tet, Will Johnson. Like what?
All of them. Mason Graham. All of them. Harold Fannin.
Harold Fannin. No, that was right. No, that one was mean. But man, so I've seen people, especially since the Senior Bowl kicked off, really just pumping up Jaxson Dart, and it's just one of those things to me where, dude, I watch so much college football, like every Saturday, much to the chagrin of some of my loved ones, I'm locked in.
Yeah.
Like you can
And
come
SEC,
over.
you're focused on the SEC too.
Yes,
So
and SEC, yeah, live SEC football.
yep.
I at no point during the season was anyone talking about him like this. Because we talk about draft stuff, read Dane Brugler stuff during the season. At no point was anyone saying that this guy's a franchise quarterback prospect.
No.
And then he comes out, and all of a sudden we're just propping him up to be this first round pick, and not just a first round pick, like potentially, depending on who you talk to, a top 10, top 5, top 3 pick in the upcoming draft. And so I like this week when I was on the manic like draft board run and we're finalizing the top 50, I'm like, do I need to put this guy there? And I just like I ran through like a couple quarters of a game real quick, just like refresh my memory. It's like, no, not really. As like a developmental guy, like in like round 4, maybe, I think he's okay to take the chance there. But I would say from an accuracy standpoint, from what kind of offense is he running standpoint, from a decision-making standpoint, like you are starting from scratch damn near. And I just find it interesting that he's kind of been propped up as like this super talented, polished quarterback prospect when it's just not really the case. It's also, because Lane Kiffin, the Ole Miss head coach, play caller, football journeyman, he's known as an offensive guy, and he gets a lot of reverence for some of the production he's had calling plays. But he's not putting quarterbacks to the NFL. Like that's not. Lane might tweet that that's what he cares about to get recruits. I've seen him tweet about it before. That we're trying to get quarterbacks to the NFL and train pro prospects. But then you watch the games, you watch them call plays. No, you're not. You're trying to score as many points as you possibly can, however you can. Lane will go to like the alternate part of like the dictionary to find some cheese play that no one's ever seen before. And then run it one time and you get an 80-yard touchdown, but it's nothing that translates anywhere to the NFL. And it's fun. Like, dude, as like when you're watching on Saturday, it's just like a college football enjoyer, and you're just here to be entertained for a few hours and watch the game. Dude, I love it. It's awesome. It's funny. Like you got guys streaking wide open. They're running shot plays. They're throwing it deep. They're scoring touchdowns. It's fun. And then you get into points where you have to throw it all away, right? And we've talked about before the end of the Florida game when you're in multiple, and because in my brain that kind of when I remember watching it, it was just like one drive that stuck out to me. But if you go back and watch like the whole second half, when they get into those tight spots, and they really have to gut it out. Okay, we can't cheese them, we can't trick them. We're gonna have to just steady running offense and try to set things up so we can hit it later in the fourth quarter when we need a big play. They couldn't do it. And part of that was to Dart's accuracy problem and his decision-making problems. And then you get to the final drive where they need a touchdown basically to save their season. They need a drive to save their season, save their playoff hopes. Man, he could have thrown 4 interceptions on one drive. And to me, like those are the moments that you're looking for in a quarterback. Not, not second quarter, open field from, like the minus 30 where we still got 70 yards to go for a touchdown. You can call whatever the hell you want. That's when Lane's at his best. But when you got to stick with the plan, stick with the program.
Situational, high leverage,
high leverage downs, it's bad. So I can't understand this. I will say this. I do think he's a more talented player than Matt Corral was a few years ago.
Agree.
But you're dealing with the same baseline in terms of how far you have to get to be a starting quarterback. I just can't understand how it's the first round pick.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with him. I have like a late third or early fourth grade on him. I'm good with it. Like nothing's going to sway me off of that. Like I don't care how much people are hyping him up. I'm more comfortable taking him in round 4 than I am on day 2 or even round 1. Same. I know he's young, and I know that's the argument for him. But it's also one of these things where you have to show some feel. And there's a lot of stuff where his eyes are very locked in. And again, it could come down to some of the coaching and some of what they do there. But then there's also times where it's like, hey, I know you can go 1-2 here. And he'll kind of go one and done and then scramble. His timing is off. Like he takes an extra second to get rid of the ball sometimes. Sometimes that's because of read routes that they do. But sometimes that's just kind of how he throws. And I remember that's how he threw at USC. So I'm not shocked that he kind of does it the same way, operates the same way. He's got a live arm. He's a good athlete. And he's got plenty of size. Totally get all that. And he's young. So totally get all those arguments for it. But to me, that screams a dart throw after pick 80, not a guy you take top 10, top 15, top 20, top 30, top 40. Because if you do that, you're anointing him. And this is not a guy that's like, oh man, I would want my fan base just going right away. He's going to be ready, because even if he has tools and stuff, there's still a lot that he needs to work on. I come back to the Senior Bowl where anytime he had to go under center and take a snap, he couldn't do it. Like he couldn't even get the snap. And again, I'm not going to damn a guy just because of 1 week where he couldn't get a snap with a new center, but other guys could do it, and if this, that's the thing about being a round one quarterback and why I'm maybe so hard on some of my grades is you got to wake up and do it. You got to throw pat and go to a receiver or throw out the combine to receivers you've never worked with and better throw on the money, because that's what the good ones do. And I will say this, Dart had a good throwing day at the combine, also giving himself the laces every snap. So, he's snapping it to himself. But he did. He had a good combine throwing day. It's routes on air and everything, but he did with timing stuff. Senior Bowl, I was very unimpressed. And I was just like you. When I saw some hype happen in January, and I talked to Dane on this show about it, Dane Brugler, I was like, hey, I'm still round 4 with this guy. And he kind of like nodded his head like, yeah, kind of the same. He's a little higher, but kind of sees it the same way. Went back and watched a couple more games. And I'm like, yeah, this is what I saw all year when I watched this guy, that he has tools, but I don't think his feel for the position is very natural. I think that's maybe what I come to. And it's like, could you teach that? Maybe. I'm not going to take that risk, though. That's why I'm higher on a guy like Riley Leonard, than other people, is that I think his feel for the position is better than he gets credit for. And he's a really good athlete. So I'm glad he brought Dart up. He's a guy that this QB class, this whole draft class, there's lack of consensus all the way. And so we're going to have a lot of these quarterback discussions about like, really, you like that guy? But Dart is one that I've seen a lot of hype with. I'm like, yeah, he has tools, but man, there's a lot that you have to work with this guy. And it just the tape wasn't as clean as I think it's getting made out to be. So I'm right there with you on that. I'll be writing about these quarterbacks pretty soon. So just wait for that. Yeah. I'll wrap up with my last guy, and this will be quick because the running back class is awesome. As of right now, I had 6 running backs make my top 50, which is a little rich. But I had 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 guys that I think could be majority share guys in a backfield, meaning like they could be the primary running back in a backfield, either the ace alpha or share a backfield. But this is Dylan Sampson, running back Tennessee. Just missed my top 50. I could have squeezed him in there. I might bump him over Trayvon Henderson because, man, Sampson, he's only 200 pounds. He listed at 200 pounds. This dude is a running back. This dude's got vision. He's got balance. He's got some good burst to him as well. Kind of trying to figure out the exact style, some Devontae Freeman there, but I think Sampson's got he doesn't take as many hits as Devontae did. And I actually like that. Sampson's not usually my preferred back. I like my guys a little bigger, weird. I like all my positional value guys with size and everything, but he plays like a big back without taking the hits. He doesn't take a lot of square on big shots. He knows how to kind of manage those, Wayne Gretzky it a little bit and absorb hits or work to the outside. But this dude, the term I keep coming back to is efficient mover. This guy has no fat in his footwork. This guy has no fat with his tempos, no fat with his vision. If he needs to cut, he cuts perfectly. He anticipates when to cut. Really, really like this guy. I think Sampson is, I essentially have a late second, early third round grade on him, like I do with a whole bunch of other backs in this class. I really like Dylan Sampson, so I wanted to give him a shout out because this is a really good running back in a really good running back class. So also won SEC Player of the Year. So it's not just an eye test thing, this is a production thing too. And by the way, Tennessee's offense can get shot to Mars because it's repulsive. it's a crime against football. It really is. And honestly, I feel bad. The quarterbacks in it. Sorry, I'm erasing my notes on my little whiteboard here, and I wrote Heineke, and I must have been wanting to say Jaxson Dart.
Yeah.
so yeah, he's a Heineke. He's a Heineke plus. But no, but it's just watching that offense, and then Nino, right? Yeah, Nino. I can't remember. It was Nico. That's what I'm. Nico. That's right. Nino's son. Nico. Nico. God, he's got some talent. I know he's really hyped up, but he's got to work on throwing under pressure. Any sign of pressure sends him just skidding downfield. It's bad. So he's young. So, but he does have some talent. But for next year's quarterback class, I just want to mention him too.
Well, I remember 2 years ago now. A lot of people ask me like, why don't you care about Hendon Hooker? I'm like, dude, this offense it functionally cannot exist in the NFL. Like literally, no. It cannot exist.
Yeah, 'cause it has
like if you have college football 25, literally just go line up, go into a game and flip to the Tennessee playbook. It's ridiculous. Like you have to zoom out the camera so far just to see everyone on the field, because if you're like on the right hash, your leftmost receiver could be standing all the way to the sideline on the other side of the field. It's like 35-yard distance from like ball to like the furthest receiver away from you. That's ridiculous. Yeah. Because USF, I remember there was a season we were talking about Byron Brown.
I can't believe he stayed there.
Dude, I watched him throw a bubble screen 32 yards across the field that got tackled for -1. I'm like, dude, that should be illegal. Like that ball should be picked off every single time. Every single time. You're gonna throw a ball that far horizontally? Come on now. It's not good for the sport. It's not good for the quarterback.
It's not good for the sport. It's not. The play that sent me, and this will I'll wrap it up on crapping on the Tennessee offense, is they're playing Oklahoma, and Oklahoma runs a true 3-down front, no offensive outside linebackers on the ball. So it's a truly three guys down there. They had 5 players in the box because of just how soft on 3rd and 1. Oh, no, I'm sorry, on 1st and 10. 5 players in the box. Tennessee had 9 players in the box. They just had 2 split out receivers. They had 7 blockers plus the quarterback and the running back with a running quarterback. Nico is a running quarterback as well. And then they run an RPO, but it's not an RPO where the quarterback is reading anything in the box or any defender. He's just reading off coverage on the outside. So even though they had 7 blockers plus a running quarterback, so it's called 7.5 against 5 defenders in the box, Nico throws the hitch route and goes for like a 7-yard gain. Just hand the ball off. You got I get, and when you throw a hitch and everything, those are called advantage reads, or gimme reads. Hey, if you got a gimme out there, those were originally invented, because those aren't true RPOs to me. Those are called package plays to me, but that's a whole nother discussion. Those plays were invented when you have a dude on the outside, when you have Randy Moss, Devontae Adams, Andre Johnson, T.O. I'm thinking of these guys back from the early aughts when these started becoming, popular. Like, that's why you throw them. Our best players are receiver. This is how we get them the ball. Not to just throw it to sophomore here. The number count is all that matters. And so you're not teaching the quarterback where the true advantage is, because they have to actually learn what the box count is. What are the good looks? That's the next step quarterback play. But I just, that's one of those things where it's like, I know on a whiteboard or blackboard, chalkboard, I know when you're going over these plays, why you throw that, the gimme advantage read. But man, you got to look at the box too. You got to understand number count and understand that we have 7 and they have 5. That 7-on-7 is amazing. 7-on-7 is what you want as an offense. 7-on-6 is ideal. 7-on-5 and you throw the ball like touchdown. Oh my God! Sorry, I tweeted it and I'm like, it got like 5 likes because I was like, yeah, get off my lawn. But yeah, I just had to mention that. But with Tennessee offense, but still like Dylan Sampson as a late round 2, round 3 running back. I think he's a very good player. We are closing it out today after free agency, a little draft talk at the end there. We'll be back on Monday, me and Matt, to preview free agency for offense. because next week it's free agency, which is a lot of fun. And then we'll recap the first week of free agency at the end of next week. I am Nate Tice. You can find me at Nate_Tice. That is Charles McDonald. Where can they find you, Charles?
You can find me on Blue Sky, 4 verts. Yeah, just check out the work we did last week, the combine. All the
check out our big boards,
mock drafts. I think the combined one's coming out soon. So yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming all from now through the end of the draft. So it's kind of cool though, because I've had my friends tell me like they'll be scrolling like Apple News and they'll click on some Yahoo stuff and they'll see us on the videos on the website. Like, oh yeah, people actually see what we're doing. We're not just like this own little.
My brother-in-law.
Like, on the computer and it's over.
My brother-in-law was like realizing what I did for a line of work when he was updating his fantasy team, and he was just like, "Oh," I was like, yeah. Yahoo. Yeah. That's how it works. But yeah, make sure you check out our big boards. We each did a top 50. We'll have a consensus board at the end of the week, kind of averaging those out. And then we'll have a top 75 next month. We'll be updating that after some pro days get in there. Also, we'll be getting to some mailbag questions on top of this prospect panning that we do at the end of the shows. So send in those questions to football301mailbag@yahoosports.com or leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to jump the line. I see a couple of those got in there recently. Subscribe to us, follow us, rate us 5 stars, hopefully, or watch us on YouTube. And watch us on YouTube, I should say. You can listen to the podcast or you can do, visual. You can do both. We'd appreciate it. Watch us on YouTube on the Yahoo Sports YouTube channel. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for all you guys do. Thank you to everyone for listening. Enjoy your weekend. See you guys next time.